to eat a well-balanced diet that does have fat and, thank God, carbohydrates and protein in it. And those little things about nutrition seem so obvious, but they give you oxygen. That runs your body. That's what helps keep your well full. Touch, that's a big one. There's a whole scientific literature on touch. A little bit of touch, it releases growth hormone, and that restores your tissues. A little bit of touch, it releases serotonin, and that chases away depression and stabilizes your mood. People need to be touched. That's why spending time with even an animal, there's a great source of touch. Having a chance, even touching each other in the audience here, that little casual touch makes you feel better. And then for me, music is one of the things at the top of the scale. If I need inspiration, I put on Mussorgsky, the march from the Great Gate of Kiev, you know, pictures in an exhibition. Da, 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 da. Isn't that great? And suddenly, boom, you are ready to go. Or Mozart, or Beethoven, or Scarlatti. There's such beautiful music out there. And now, of course, we have all kinds of research. Synchronizes the sides of the brain, makes you smarter, increases your spatial learning. But it fills your well. Now, we've talked about so many different ways to come back to inner peace. And none of them are brain surgery. Some of them are brain chemistry. All these little things really do change your brain chemistry. But they're simple things. You don't have to be a hermit. Remember to breathe. Use reframing. Use awareness of what goes on in your mind to make a choice. Remember to be in the moment. And the idea here is to take a small step. And what my hope is that each one of you today will identify one small step that you could take toward inner peace and actually do it. Remember at the beginning of our time, I said my motto was this: do what you can, not what you won't. Committing to 2 hours of running and yoga may sound great, but if you won't do it, it just leaves you feeling like a failure. Committing to 2 minutes of breathing may not sound like much, but it can change your life, and you can do it. So I want to end with a story about the effectiveness of small changes that comes to you from one of my dearest friends, Dr. Janet Quinn. And she's a nurse and a researcher and a wise woman. Janet wrote a fabulous book called I Am a Woman, Finding My Voice. And she had been invited to a big conference in Australia and had a week to spend with the Aboriginal people. One day, she was with a group of, there were Aboriginal women elders she was with, and they were going foraging for bush tucker, which is stuff to eat that you find in the outback. Little delicacies like honey ants and witchetty grubs. So it always depends on your frame of reference. Things have changed slightly in the bush because they were in a van foraging. And they were driving down the road, and all of a sudden the van slows down. Janet looks up, and what does she see but the behind of a large camel, which is right in front of the van. And here it is. The camel is just walking along. It's walking along, and the van is behind it. And so the driver goes toot, 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 and the camel goes, it's running down the road. And then after a while, of course, the camel slows down again. And the driver goes toot, 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 and the camel starts to move. And this goes on for hours. And as Janet is contemplating the derriere of the dromedary, she's thinking to herself, just look around here. As far as you see, There is a zillion miles of unmolested outback, but the camel is still on the road. If the camel were to make 1 degree of change in its course, just a little bit this way, pretty soon the camel would be free from the van which is bothering it, and it would have a space of limitless possibility in which to roam. And that's the idea. It doesn't take an enormous change. You don't have to change your life 180 degrees to find inner peace and to find the sense of joy and love and community that you find when you come back into your peaceful center. It takes the smallest intention for change. And that small intention can really make an enormous difference, not only in your life, but in the lives of the people that you touch. Because maybe the best news is this: inner peace is contagious. So I want to thank all of you very much for coming, and I hope you'll find that one little change, that one little degree that you can make and add your sense of peace and joy to this very busy world. Thanks for coming.
Coming up next, a special bonus segment. Joan leads a guided meditation session and shares more stories about inner peace.
So first of all, thank you all for coming. There are 4 points that I'd like to make about meditation. The first point is everybody thinks their mind is going to stop, and it isn't. So you can let go of that thought. They think, oh, I'll focus, I'll be blissful. Everybody does this. And what will actually happen is you'll notice that your mind chatters a lot. So when that happens, just say, this is cool, I'm normal, and then let it go. Second point I want to make is that meditation is kind of like a mental martial arts, because what you're really doing is learning to get out of the way of your thoughts. They keep going, but you are able to step back and just come into a different part of yourself that isn't bothered so much by the thoughts anymore, and that's deeply restful. That brings me to the third point. And the third point is that there's actually a very specific physiology associated with meditation, and that has been termed the relaxation response. A researcher at Harvard, Dr. Herbert Benson, figured out it was the opposite of the body's fight or flight response. As you do this, your blood pressure is decreasing, and certain hormones are increasing. For example, hormones that repair the body. So it's a state of deep rest, which is like sleep but different from sleep. The fourth point that I want to make is that you all already know how to meditate. You do it all the time. Joan, when you paint a picture as an artist and you're like incredibly absorbed in what you're doing, you lose track of time. That's a meditation. When you play the harp, Joanne, you lose track of time and you're absolutely absorbed and present with what you're doing, present moment activities. When you do your Pilates, Rob, it's the same thing. You attune to the feelings in your muscles and everything else disappears. Even if you're balancing your checkbook, it's a meditation as long as there's enough money in it. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to guide you through a meditation when the focus that you're absorbing yourself in is going to be your own breath. And in addition to the breath, you could choose a word or a phrase that might help you feel peaceful. So for example, as I breathe in, sometimes I like to say to myself, I am, and as I breathe out, peaceful. So the breath is almost singing to me, I am peaceful. I am peaceful. And all you need to do is close your eyes. And remember, don't worry about what you're doing. Your mind will wander. And when it does, you just gently bring it back. So just allow your eyes to close. And now begin to notice the flow of your breathing. Notice everything you can about how the breath comes into your body and how the breath flows out again. You might even notice your belly expanding as you breathe in, and then your chest and even your throat filling with air, and then how the body relaxes and lets go as you breathe out. Now as you do this, every breath allows you to notice a little bit more about it. And you can notice a little space between the breaths after you've breathed out and before the next breath comes in. It's like the little place when the tide turns and it's completely still there. Everything's out. New breath waiting to be born. And that's a peaceful center that you can find anytime. Now, if you like, you can add a phrase to the in-breath and out-breath. Perhaps, I am as you breathe in, and peaceful as you breathe out. Or any phrases of your choice. And when you notice that you're thinking, just notice, let go. Back to the breath. Resting in the little space, the gap between the breaths. And so now just notice whatever state your body and mind are in without judging either one. And you might want to take a little stretch, a couple of deeper breaths. And when you're ready, come on back and open your eyes. It's always a little hard to talk right afterwards. You look relaxed. Yes? Great. So I'm wondering if you have any comments or questions.
Well, Joan, I was wondering, what is the difference between meditating and spacing out?
That's a great question, because what meditation really is a form of awareness. It's a tuning in. Zoning out. If you ask someone, where are you? They say, don't know. just like when you miss your exit on the turnpike. But the idea of meditation is that it makes you aware all day long, so that not only are you learning to focus in these few minutes that you sit, but in all the activities of your day.
What about images? Are they helpful? I had this wonderful image of a brook flowing down and becoming a river, and I found that to be really helpful to get me into meditation.
You know, you're an artist, Joan, and so the fact that imagery like that would come up is perfect for you, and it's just the way that your whole body-mind system works. A lot of people like to focus on an image itself. So if that's comfortable for you, and you can focus on the image of a brook, you can just breathe and be with that brook image. It'll work just fine. Well, thank you all, and I want to say just one more thing, and that is a meditation where you don't relax at all is just as great as a meditation where you do relax. And the whole point of it is that it trains you in awareness and letting go of your thoughts and being in the present moment. So don't judge your meditation. A meditation where all you do is bring your mind back from where it's wandering 100 times in 10 minutes is just as good as a meditation where you're really feeling peaceful. And you'll start to notice the benefits in all the other times of your life. And also you'll have those physiological benefits. Do you have trouble asking for help? I used to have a lot of trouble. I remember one day I was standing in the elevator with coffee in both hands. In fact, a whole tray of coffee that I'd volunteered to go get for everyone in the office. There were other people in the elevator, but did I ask for help? I pressed the button with my nose. There was an older woman in there, and she said, "You know, dear, you better learn to ask for help. It's really important." And it is, because asking for help is something that not only gives you a more peaceful heart and some help in a busy world, but it's a kindness to other people. If you ask somebody for help, you give them the opportunity to do something that opens up their heart and makes them feel better. If you have trouble asking for help, here's a little exercise you can try. For the next week, 3 times every day, ask somebody for help, even if you don't think you need it. Now, here's a really neat thing. Ever ask for directions and you did need it, and you got terrible directions and couldn't get where you were going? With this exercise, even if you get awful directions, you already know where you're going, so you can't lose. But you do give a stranger an opportunity to be of help, which will make them feel better all day long. So, it's easier than learning to play the piano. Learn to ask for help. One of the things that can be most upsetting is when something happens and we have a judgment about it and say, "Oh, I wish that didn't happen. It was a terrible thing." Or sometimes something really wonderful happens and we also have a judgment about it. Any time we have a judgment that something is good or bad, as soon as something else happens, we lose our peace and we get upset. The fact is, life is always unfolding, and you never do know what will happen next. One of my favorite stories about this is about a Chinese farmer. One day, his horse runs away. Now, this is a terrible thing, you might think, because having a horse makes him a rich man. He has somebody to help him plow the field. All the neighbors come, they say, "Oh, terrible thing, you've lost your precious horse." All the farmer says is maybe. The next morning, his horse actually returns. It's got a whole herd of wild mustangs with it. All the neighbors come again and they say, "Oh, you're the richest man in China. What a wonderful thing." All the farmer says is maybe. The next morning, his only son gets up, gets on the wild mustang to break it, and is thrown. And instead the farmer's son ends up with a badly broken leg. This seems like a terrible thing because it's planting season, and now there's nobody to help the farmer in the field. All the neighbors come again, and they say, terrible thing, your son is injured. All the farmer says is maybe. The next morning when they get up, there's a big commotion in the town. And what's happened is the emperor's soldiers have come to conscript all the young men to go into a war. It's a terrible war because none of the young men has returned alive. But the farmer's son has a broken leg, so he can't go to war. All the neighbors come and they say, what a wonderful thing! This is great! Your son can't go to war. And all the farmer says is maybe. This particular parable actually continues for 500 more verses. And the idea is it terrible? Is it wonderful? We don't know. But if you just stay in your heart, in the place that says the world is full of possibilities that will always unfold, and unfold for the good if I hang in there long enough, you get out of worrying about whether a particular event is good or bad. So just remember to say, maybe.